Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Pageau. The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by Media Clip, Advertech Printing, and School Photographers of America.
Hello again, and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Pageau, and today we're joined by Elisa Staff, who is a photographer and brand strategist based in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Hi, Lisa. How are you today?
I am great. Love having this conversation with you. I'm excited about it.
So, Lisa, you've been in the business for 30 years. You've seen a lot of things. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into the business and what's kept you in the business?
Okay, so this sounds super nerdy. I got into the business because at the time I was modeling and I was uncomfortable being on that side of the camera, but being behind the camera just fit for me. I loved fashion. I loved design. I just loved capturing beautiful things. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something about photography that allows you to sit and be in a moment. Mm-hmm. The moments are a lot faster now because of the cameras and because everybody has an iPhone and everybody's a photographer now. But at that time, that's the one thing, and being able to connect with people in that way and just collaborate with them. And I think that's been the longevity that's kind of carried me through. It's I guess, a language of love, isn't it?
Well, it's funny you said, because almost every actor you talk to says they want to be a director. So you were a model who wanted to be a photographer. So it's not that strange of a jump, actually. So how long did you model before you transitioned to being behind the lens, or did you do both for a while to kind of get your business going?
I was modeling for a few years and then I got married. So then, I kind of went all in because of the travel and everything made it difficult. So
Sure.
Transferred over into a photography business and spent a lot of time in the dark room, a lot of time loading film, like on my
all those skills that aren't really useful right now.
I know. Sold those cameras for like nothing. Nobody.
Film cameras are hot right now. I mean,
I know.
You kind of wish you'd hold on to them, right? You could probably make a pretty penny off of them now.
It's the thing now. People are like, we're film photographers. I'm like, yeah, I know. Been there, been in the dark room a lot.
Yeah, and then the attitude is like, when you remember what it was like shooting film, it was mostly positive, but there were issues, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like,
yeah,
you really want to go back to that, the double exposed frames by accident and things like that.
Yeah. Shooting a Polaroid first when you're doing commercial jobs, and then can you push this or can you pull this? And just seeing trannies, you're just looking at trannies for everything and hoping that you got that light reading right. And we were talking about gels before. Let's throw some gels in there too.
So what kind of photography were you doing? Because it sounds to me like you're doing a little fashion, a little commercial. You weren't really doing portraiture.
So in Canada, I was doing mostly commercial work. Here, I'm living in a smaller community, and I've been able to make some great relationships and great connections with people that in this town, it's one degree of separation. So your name gets passed on to other people. So you hope that they like you and you've done a good job. But I was able to connect with somebody that I had just had conversations with. I'd done a little bit of work with her, and she started out a magazine with a group of other fabulous individuals. And I've been able to work with them, do lifestyle, do fashion, just a lot of people. And that's kind of my jam. So whether the people are, shooting fashion, shooting editorial, shooting lifestyle shots, that's kind of the connection that I love. And then that kind of goes into everything else, whether you're doing families, there was a Low Country Speakers event here where I was shooting Sanjay Gupta and Condoleezza Rice, and they were bringing in, big people, big names, or shooting for, the other week I was shooting a 4-day thing for NutriBlend, where it's just connecting with people. And most people I find tend to, as soon as I'm connecting with them, they're like, I hate getting my picture taken. And I think that's most people that are old,
right,
our age, or actually over 20, that haven't grown up taking selfies like 1 foot away from their face. Most people either they're running from you, they're trying to ghost you, or they're having a drink before you shoot them, but just being able to kind of connect with people in whatever situation and have fun with them and make it a good experience and relax. Like, that's my jam. And I think understanding what your flow state is all about where your success comes from.
Well, talk to me about flow state, because I've heard that phrase before. What are you saying when you say that?
I think, if you really love what you're doing, you have that technical background and everything, and you love what you're doing, but every job that you do always has a different component to it. So you walk into it
Sure.
sometimes blind, you're a little bit anxious, or I'm like, I don't know what to expect, where these people are going to be like, what's the set like, all of that, because a lot of the situations I walk into, there's not a lot of pre-production. You're just going and you're bringing a team together, where I have publishers and stylists and makeup artists and all of that, and you're trying to bring everybody's vision together. I think when you step into the power that you have, which sounds like a little ridiculous, but you step into it and you enjoy it, and you enjoy it so much that you're not caught up in the small intricacies. You're actually automatically doing it and envisioning it, and then it starts to flow. It starts to come automatically. You're not questioning things. You're just feeling what needs to be done.
But you have to have a lot of confidence when you go into that, right? I mean, you're not going to get into the flow state in your first 3 or 4 shoots, in the sense that, because you may feel yourself kind of letting loose and going there, and it's like, well, is that okay or whatever? So how long did it take you to kind of develop that skill to get into that zone?
I think just with opening up my business and just being in my own name now, that it automatically started to happen. So in the last 5 years, I would say I have become, and it could be like, honestly, it could be that I'm older now and I'm just comfortable, and I don't care as much what other people think. I'm comfortable, and you engage with people in a different way, that you're just, trying to fake who you are and posture and all of that. You're just comfortable with who you are. So I think that's a big thing. A lot of it too is the experience. Like, honestly, I've got to say, there's been a lot of situations that I've walked into, and I usually bring 4 or 5 cameras with me. I have a big pack out, different cameras for different things. You have your favorites, you have your workhorses. I bring a bunch of lighting with me, all for location, but honestly, there's always situations where something doesn't work and you're in the middle of shooting and you need to figure that out. And if you don't have an assistant that can figure it out, you're that person. So I think a lot of it as well comes from the fact that you've had bad things happen, you've figured it out, you get confident from that, you move on to the next thing, and experience just builds confidence, doesn't it?
There's certainly some of that. The benefit of getting older is when you realize, not only what you do know, but what you don't know. Right. So can you talk a little bit about some of the things you may have learned on the fly, right? Let's say you're at a shoot and, maybe the brief to photograph a piece of equipment, was, oh, well, that's different, or we're not going to do it. How do you adapt to a change in a situation like that?
I think a lot of times with lighting, you need to know lighting. You need to be able to walk into a situation, whether it's indoors or outdoors, and be able to assess that and exactly how you're going to light that. And I've honestly been to a situation where I brought all my lighting except for that one beautiful case that has all my umbrellas and my Octabank and all of that in it. And you're like, shoot, what am I going to do now? And it's just being able to have that creative knowledge to be able to still make it work and not let them know you've forgotten anything. This is perfectly fine. Don't cry. Just don't cry. That doesn't help. I think as well, if you know, like, if you're confident in who you are, if you're aligning with your clients, if you're aligning with your business model, if you're aligning with your pricing, all of those things help to give you that confidence too, that you're meshing with the right people. When you get to a point where you don't have to say yes to everything, a job may come in and you might, there's not that scarcity. Energy flows. If you say no to something, you're going to make room for something else that comes in that might align more with you. So, I think we've all been in a position where we're shooting for a client, and in the back of your mind, you're like, why did I say yes? Or I'm not charging enough, or this is like, they're mean. Like, why am I working with them? Or I know. And I've been to jobs that I've worked 4 days on, and you leave and you're so glad that you're leaving because it was sitting heavy on you. There was something about it that just wasn't a good fit for you. And I think understanding what that good fit is, then you perform a lot better as well. Money will always come. You just need to align the right way, make room for it. So again, is that scarcity, saying no to certain things, and then bigger things always seem to come. Or I hope they do. They seem to do. They seem to.
One of the things I find with photographers who maybe started in the film world and migrated to the digital world, they've made the transition, is they tend to have a propensity to want to get it right in the camera, right? Where they're going to do the setup, they're going to do the lights, and they're going to do it. Whereas people who are kind of born digital just have this idea, well, I can fix it in post. So is that something you've seen as well?
Yeah, I think that's all encompassing across the planet now with everything. They would rather sit in front of the computer and spend all the time throwing fancy filters on it and all of that. And a lot of that stuff, and I don't want to date myself, but a lot of that stuff is so transient and trendy that, that's so 2021. There's certain things, if you're looking at Annie Leibovitz, if you're looking at any of the great photographers that you're seeing, I remember Philip Dixon, all the great photographers that you would see in magazines, whether they're in the 80s, 90s, 2000, whatever, there's a consistency to them. And it's fantastic lighting, depth, richness, all of that. And if we understand the lighting, then even on the back end, we are saving hours and hours and hours of time in front of the computer. There's times that when you're hitting everything right, you're downloading onto your computer and you're like, I really do not need to do anything to these images. Like, it's slight tweaks, the consistency, you can run the whole gamut all the way through and you're done, as opposed to sitting for days. People talk about editing and how long it takes. Well, if you do it right in the beginning, it makes a difference.
Well, there'll always be something with cropping and that kind of thing. But I think you're right. When you have to go through and do a wholesale cleanup, retone it, throw LUTs on it, and all those kind of things. Anyway, but when you have to do that, I think you're relying too heavily on the technology and not so much on the art of it. And maybe that's the old school way of thinking it, right? Maybe that's a dated way of thinking it, but I think there's some value in that perspective, where you're trying to get it right at the moment of capture.
Absolutely. And I think, times change, styles change, but there is that consistency to quality.
Right. No, I'm saying, looking over the portfolio on your website, it's like you said, it's a very classic look. Are there people who, obviously they're coming to you because they like the look? Are you seeing that spanning generations? Because obviously if you're doing weddings now, you're doing people in their maybe mid-20s, late 20s, and they grew up with maybe a different look. Do they want that classic look for that kind of work?
A lot of them want, either saying light and airy or dark and moody, and in between those there's good and bad. Light and airy sometimes ends up being like blown out, no detail in the whites, just like is cringy. You're gonna regret that, or 30 years from now when your kids are like, why can't I see your wedding dress? What's the white blob? They're going to have problems with that. So I think sometimes it's a little bit of education. You can still take that, a good file and, manipulate it in whatever way. So a lot of times I'll just see what their vibe is, what they're loving, where they're getting married, just all of those things to create the assets first. And sometimes I'll do something, I'm like, let me just get the vibe of the day. We'll do that. And if you want a special collection of, what you're saying you want, we'll create that for you, but you'll still have that consistent portfolio of images that will stand the test of time. I think too, a lot of times when clients are younger, they are jumping onto these fads that, again, you're going to see something in 6 months or a year that nobody's going to like. When it's a higher profile client, they appreciate being able to see details and things, or to have not have an orange skin tone. They want to look healthy and all of that. So
Right.
it's
it's interesting to say, because I remember the trend, what was it, about 10-12 years ago, was the trash the dress.
Yeah.
Remember when that was like the hot thing? And again, I look at something like that as very dated right now. You're not seeing that so much now.
I guess it depends on what you're building your portfolio, and if you're niching into a certain group and that group is able to withstand, like you're able to price properly for them and that's enough. But if you're trying to grow your business and if you're trying to do commercial work or larger clients, they're going to want those things that are not as trendy, that are going to print well in a magazine, if it's going to go to a magazine or anything like that.
When do you get the inkling you need to fire a client?
It happens, doesn't it? It happens.
It does. That's what I'm saying. I mean, it sounds to me like, you've got the maturity and the experience to say, this isn't going to work out.
There's certain situations that you can work through. When I've been on sets before and in between the publisher, the fashion stylist, and they're making each other cry. And I'm like, I'm Switzerland. I'm not taking either side. We're going to make this work. And there's situations where you can just see, there's egos at play. And I think becoming a little bit more mature, it's not as dramatic as like, we're not curing cancer. Okay. Like it's not that big a deal. But I think when you've take your ego out of it and you're speaking to clients and you're just bumping heads, and I'm not seeking drama. I'm not seeking, a lot of validation, but when you're going and they're just not respecting you, or you're walking away from conference calls where you've accomplished nothing, you're frustrated continually, there's no joy, you just are dreading it. Again, you just need to have that conversation where you say, I don't think we're a good fit, or just raise your rates so high that they can't pay it.
Well, that is the best revenge, right? If you can just raise the rates. I've got a special rate just for you.
Yes.
So you came through the pandemic, and how did that affect your business? Because clearly there was a lot of events that didn't happen. Weddings were postponed. So I know a lot of wedding photographers and social photographers who are, now they're overwhelmed because people are catching back up with those activities. But when the pandemic happened, what were some of your responses to how it impacted you?
There's a few things. I think we all tried pivoting, which was the word of 2020, pivot, right? We all tried to pivot.
Right, exactly.
I had started a podcast as well with a partner because we realized at that time that our friends weren't that interesting, and we needed to, if we were going to be quarantined, we needed more people to speak to. So, we tried some different things as well. But as far as photography, the small community I live in, I think there was a lot of accommodating things. So with me if I'm working with a 200 lens, I'm far enough away that I could shoot. I did fashion for a few months where the models were wearing masks and I was wearing a mask, and it wasn't the most fashion forward, but hey, it was so easy to shoot because you didn't have to worry about their expression, and we would be having conversations the whole time as we're shooting because you couldn't tell. So you made accommodations for that, and it worked. A lot of the events, because in this community, I'm shooting events, I'm shooting corporate, I'm shooting weddings, I'm shooting people, I'm shooting I'm shooting interior design. A lot of those things can still be done. The events became smaller, which I think is fabulous. So you got the core group smaller, more intimate, more meaningful. And that compared to 300 people at a wedding, 100% better.
Yeah, that's actually what happened. My oldest got married in 2020. And at the time, we just kind of thread the needle because at the time, the state of Michigan changed its regulations so that outdoor events, no more than 50 people could happen. So the event hold changed, and actually it was a great wedding.
You know what? And not to throw shade on it, but the best thing about it is you could tell people, oh, we would have loved to invite you, even if you did, but we couldn't.
I'm so sorry.
Yes, would have loved to have had you there, but.
So you tried some different things, but you're not continuing to do those things. Can you talk a little bit about that? How you've kind of like realized you can't spread yourself too thin as a business owner and as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So there was, again, through COVID, we started a business. I started a business with a partner where we were doing branding, social media strategy for small businesses. And it seemed like a great idea, right? Like on paper, it's fantastic. But when you get into the nitty gritty of running a business and you end up spending, and some people are fine with it. I'm more, I want to have those relationships like one-on-one and having the
Right.
experience, the creative experience. When I
Right.
found that I was spending most of my time in Zoom calls or, creating posts that's, they needed this post to go out right away. And I ended up being the one that was doing it or something and doing these small nitty gritty things that you're like, that's just not where I thrive. So I think
Right.
sometimes you try things. If they fit, great. If they don't, what have you learned from it? What's the lesson I've learned from that? And there's a lot of things I learned in those 2 years, a lot of experiences and things that I can bring to my business and have been able to up level my business too. So when we're talking about aligning and energy flowing, I think as well, we need to be militant about our time. We need to decide, when we're doing something that we love, what are the things that if you're talking about the Pareto principle, the 80-20, what's the 20% that's going to move the needle and going to bring me happiness?
And again, I see a lot of that with entrepreneurs who, they either want to do it all, right? So they won't ask for help, or they focus on the things that become tangential to the business because they either don't trust anyone else to do it, or they think they have to do it all. And one of the advantages about today's world is there are a lot of online tools that can help you do some of these things, like billing and invoicing and all those kind of things, which used to take crazy amounts of time. Now it's much easier.
Yeah. And you've got to use all of those things, get that system going. Like I'm not, there's no affiliate links. I use HoneyBook that has like streamlined
Which one?
HoneyBook. So for me, any inquiries that come in, they get an automatic, they fill out my contact form, it automatically sends them out something, they go into a workflow that I've automated. So there's so much nurturing that goes in through that. There's never anything that's missed. I put all my tasks in there, I can bill through there. All of that stuff is done through there. Whether I'm using that, whether I'm using Flowdesk for newsletters or anything like that. I've just, trying new things out and seeing how they work. Like the most that we can make out of our time is better for our business. There's a new thing that I just tried to expedite my conversions when I'm in Lightroom, like let's try that out and let's just stay up to date with any of the updates that come out with Lightroom so that your quality is better and your time is better spent as well. And being again militant about how you're spending your time, even how long are you on the computer? Like, let's talk about, I've billed out at this much and it sounds like a lot of money, but let's track your hours. How much are you making? $10 an hour or are you making $500 an hour? Like where is it at? So
yeah, because I mean that is one of the things a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is understanding what their cost of goods sold are, right? So you've got, your cameras may be paid for, right? But maybe you need to rent a piece of equipment to do a shoot, or maybe you have to have insurance, you have to have all this overhead you need to have to be in the business. So a lot of photographers who are newer to the business tend to overlook that. It's like, I got a camera and I can shoot and that's great. It's like, no, there's a lot of overhead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the competition now too, people, I've had someone call me. Don't think they looked at my website. They called me and they're like, hey, can you come right now and do a family shoot? And I'm like, well, usually we have a conversation first and we, have you seen my work? And let's make sure that we're a fit and all of that. And he's like, well, if you can't come right now, I'll just stop someone on the beach to take a picture with their iPhone. So when you're competing with people that are just taking pictures on iPhones, or you need to, what's that difference? Let's make sure that difference is it's qualitative.
Well, and the reality is you probably can't charge that guy what it would take to get you out there. If that's what he values, right? If he wants the immediacy of an image and he's looking and he sees, maybe he Googled local photographers, you came up, he called you, and because you're obviously an SEO rock star, so you came up first and he called you and it wasn't the right fit for the type of business he was looking for.
Absolutely.
So I was going to say, do you think that there's a challenge for photographers in today's technology where, quote, everyone has a camera or everyone has an iPhone and they all have apps to justify their rates and their existence? Because there's always somebody willing to go lower.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's competition, like through COVID again, everybody grabbed a camera and there's always going to be competition. I think
Right.
if you can professionally show up 100% of the
Mhm.
time, you're showing up, you're getting the Google reviews, you're getting everything that shows that you're professional, you're creating the
Right.
relationships, you're not a jerk. As my son said, I'm like, you're doing really well with, he works in production, does film and everything over in the UK. And he's like, Mom, I'm just not a jerk. If you can
Mhm.
show up consistently like that, people know that they
Mhm.
can count on you. You've got that reputation. People don't mind
Mhm.
spending the money. Or the people that you want to align with don't mind. And some people want to spend more. They feel better if they're spending more money. They're like, I'm gonna get
Yeah.
quality.
Well, it is interesting how you kind of see, because the internet with raising rating systems and reviews and things, where you see, photographers who, either don't show up, or they do a terrible job, or they don't give the couple an album until, months later, and then they go out of business, and they lose it. There's a
Mhm.
lot of, because the barrier to entry is so
Yeah.
low, there's a lot of sketch photographers out there.
I know. And I've had a couple, I haven't done this recently, but just ask like, hey, could you help me out? I need a second shooter. And I've gone on a few things just to I want to see how other people work too. And
Mhm.
I've been surprised by, they've got a cute little knapsack and they pull out one camera with one not professional camera, one lens, and then they're switching it out, trying to switch on the other lens in between shooting. They're doing countdowns, like on the count of 3, I'm going to take the picture. So I think a lot of times we think everybody else is like, you look on the internet, you're looking on social media, everybody else is doing it. And you're not, you're like, how are they? It's all smoke and mirrors, right? You need to be able to consistently see all of that. And I think you need to consistently understand what your brand is and who you are, what you love doing, what your niche is, as far as not maybe just doing weddings or whatever, but what that niche is, what you are specializing in, because there's always a bright shiny object on Instagram. And people are like, oh, okay, well,
Right.
right now I've got to dance and do reels, and I've got to point at things, or I've got to wear yoga pants, or I've got to do that, or everybody's going dark and moody, so I should just change everything. I think if you stand in your
Right.
power and are consistent with it and concentrate on, like, use those things as tools to inspire you, but you can't be inspired personally if you're just always feeding off of other people as well. So I think that's a big thing right now.
That is a big thing, exactly, with marketing, especially, is what I call chasing the shiny, right? Where, a lot of my audience are, well, let's say they're uh, camera store owners in their 40s, right? Should they be doing reels or TikToks? Probably not. Not to say that their business couldn't do it, but not sure they're probably not comfortable doing it. If you're going to do something like that, it should come natural and organic, right? I mean, but you see that a lot in marketing for almost any business. I'm sure you see it in photography, where there are trends and people want to hop on the trends, but like you said, things can look dated. They're transitory, and there may not be something you're good at. I mean, it doesn't strike me that you are a dark and moody person. So doing the dark and moody shoots would probably be a little challenge for you.
And I can do that. And I'll do that for people specifically, but that's not how I'm going to show up to align with some of the clients that are a little bit more high-minded as well, or want more.
Right.
And I think too, there's nothing wrong with doing reels. You can do great educational reels. You can do all the things, but it's got to be something that fits you and fits your brand. You need to know who you are and what your business is. There's so many things. This is going to be my little rant, my little vent on Instagram right now, where they take one little clip of a soundbite of someone else saying something. It's the most popular thing. And you go on Instagram and everybody's using that and saying it. So you don't hear someone's voice. You don't hear any value. What's making them different? What's making them shine? Why would I? Because we're all kind of doing the same thing. If we're photographers, it's just a different way of doing photography. So why am I going to connect with you? There's millions of fabulous photographers out there. So what makes you the person that I want to connect with?
Yeah, no, you're right. Following trends is it's very difficult for someone to break out when they're just following trends. So in your marketing, are you doing some of that stuff, or are you just kind of putting your toe in just to be somewhat relevant?
I haven't done that many reels. I have a whole bunch that I've banked and I'm not putting out. Like, oh, that's cringy. Can't do that. But I have some other ones that I'm coming into to do a little bit more education. A lot of my, I just kind of, I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with going through and talking about what's the editing process? How should you show up for this? As far as education for photographers or education for my clients, so that they, as we spoke before, they don't need to drink before they see me.
Well, you know what? I mean, you hit on a great point, because I know someone in the volume photography space who does short videos, and they are no more than 2 minutes. And this is, again, an older person, right? But what he does is he does them for his clients, and he says things like, this is how we're going to stand the students. And this is how I'm interacting with you as the customer. He's not trying to really, it's not a sales thing. It's more instructional.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sort of thing would be beneficial, as opposed to just, the happy, snappy reel of, hey, when I come to your wedding shoot, these are the props you ought to bring,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that.
I think as long as you're bringing that volume, value, let's do value, and that connection, then it's gold. And if not, just dance and point.
So why do you think there are so many photographers who are challenged by that, who do chase the trends without really distinguishing their own voice? Because there's a ton of them out there.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it is that insecurity of not doing the same as everyone else. Sometimes doing that different thing is going to bring you the tribe that you want. There's only so many people that you can facilitate in your business. And if you're niching to a certain thing that you love, there's going to be, and if you think you're a weirdo about it, there's always other weirdos out there. Like, I love weirdos, anything that, we align with, you just need to be secure with that.
So Lisa Loves Weirdos is going to be your new blog.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, if you're kind of nerdy or something, or if you appreciate certain things, or, like, find the thing that brings you joy. There's going to be other people that are engaged with that as well. And I think as well, like, when you're starting out, yes, you've got to go through that nitty gritty of earning and learning and educating. But at one point, you've got to stop oversharing. And by oversharing, I mean, whether you're getting on social media and oversharing things that have nothing to do with your business, and you're not speaking to your client, like the typical avatar that you would have, oversharing that way. But oversharing as well, when you get on the phone with a client and they're like, well, this is your pricing, but this is our budget. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I'll give you 10 extra hours, and I'm going to throw in my firstborn child and anything else in an album. And like, you've got to stop oversharing, and you've got to find where that confidence is in yourself as well.
So are there any resources that you would recommend for photographers to kind of build that confidence, maybe exercises or things they could do?
Okay. I would say, first of all, start your day off with a holistic approach. And I'm not going to get woo-woo on you, but figure out what that thing is that feeds you. Because once your day starts, once you're with clients, once you're on your computer, you can be on there till midnight sometimes. So finding some way to start your day, that whether it's just having a coffee and reading something, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's doing yoga, workout, moving your body, hanging out with your dog, reading education, listening to a podcast. First of all, start your day right. Don't touch your phone until you've done something that's fed yourself. Make space for ideas to come in. And a lot of times that comes through movement and energy and all of that ideas pop in. Document that, write it down, because that will, maybe it's just me, but that will drift away. And when you get into the nitty gritty of everything else you do. And podcasts, I freaking love podcasts. So align with some podcasts that inspire you. Listen to those. If there's ones that you can listen to while you're editing or working, that's great, whether you're driving. But honestly, podcasts are the one thing that kind of are my jam. I love listening to them. I'm not just like, I'm not just sucking up here. Like, honestly, a good conversation. I would rather listen to that all day, every day than put on Netflix.
So are there industry podcasts you recommend, or just other ones that are just great conversations that are the ones that start your engine in the morning?
I usually do a lot of business photography and all of that. Yeah. I think some of the other ones, like health ones and stuff, it gets to a point where, you know, I'm concerned about my health and all of that, but it gets to a point that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't eat or drink anything anymore. Nothing is good for me. So, but business ones, photography ones always help. And you're inspired.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good business podcasts that are out there that are not really self-helpy, but they're really geared towards entrepreneurs like John Acuff and people like that, who are, you know, really more about the holistic business owner that I think are, you know, you get a lot out of. I've shared some of them with my wife. In fact, I think you'll just benefit from this. You know, she doesn't run her own business, but I think you would get something out of this approach.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Well, cool. So where can people go to get more information about Lisa Staff and her business? You don't have a book to pitch.
I don't have a book.
Classes.
I don't have a course. First of all, you should come to Hilton Head. It's beautiful here, even in the winter. I'm found on Instagram at Lisa Staff Photo, LISASTAFF Photo. And my website is lisastafpphoto.com.
Consistency in branding is very important.
I know.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for your time, and best wishes. And thank you for being on our podcast today.
Absolutely a joy.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.